Remakes are as much a hallmark of the film industry as car chases, pretty girls, and talking animals?
So, how are you in as few words as possible?
Hollywood, it seems, cannot resist the urge to tinker, to tweak, to give it another go. While we could devote several episodes to discussing the good,
this just keeps getting better and better,
the weird, and the terrible,
Bodhi, do you have any idea how many people you've killed? How many laws you've broken?
Instead, we will be discussing an entirely different kind of remake. We call it the switcheroo.
Pull the old switcheroo!
What we mean is when a movie retells a story we know and love from another character's perspective. Perhaps the most well-known contemporary example of this is Maleficent, which retells the story of Sleeping Beauty from the villain's perspective. But is this the only time this has been done? Are any of these remakes any good? And is doing this even a good idea?
Can't be done, huh? The switch? The switch. Can't be done.
And what films would the public love to see retold through another character's eyes? Carl and I will be discussing all of this with our pal and fellow film aficionado Aristotle, so stay tuned as we discuss the switcheroo on Film School. So welcome to the show, Aristotle of Aristotle Full Throttle. It's great to have you here, man.
I went to film school, so I have some working knowledge of movies and stuff.
We all three went to film school, I believe, right?
Let's talk about this idea of the switcheroo, what I'm calling the switcheroo in this episode, which is a remake in which you retell a story that people know and love through the perspective of a different character. We've seen this done. Later on the show, we'll be looking at clips from Hamlet compared to the switcheroo versions of Hamlet. And then the most well-known example, I would argue, is Maleficent, which is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty from Maleficent's point of view. And I think that's probably going to be an interesting discussion. But before we watch those, I kind of want to get into a discussion of, is this a good idea? I mean, writers choose to tell a story from a certain perspective for a reason.
Is it a good idea? I would ask, why is this interesting? Why is this being made interesting? Why focusing on other characters? What makes that special? Is there something being told from the perspective of that character that illuminates that character's arc? You know, and then of course the questions creatively is like, did this need to be made? I think on the business end, I think especially in modern Hollywood, you know, everything's about IP and having a pre-sold audience, right? And so I think, you know, there's a cynical side of me that's like, all these switcheroos, there's like these, you know, development executives at studios or production companies are like, hey, how can we like milk more money out of this IP?
So, you have a movie for me? Yes, sir, I do. See, I figure we could do Sleeping Beauty, right? But we flip it.
So, is it a good idea? I think it's very subjective. I think it's very much depends on, I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Would you say, Carl, that if they pull it off, yeah, sure, it was a good idea to do a switcheroo?
I'm definitely of both minds for sure. Like, I feel like, is it necessary to tell some of these stories? Because it almost becomes a device or a meta device about the piece itself or the original piece. But, you know, if they do want to make every angle of certain properties, I'm like you, Justin, I'll go see it. I'll be first in line to see some of these things.
I think really, though, at the heart of this idea of retelling a story through another character's perspective is to pay tribute to a character that maybe we felt wasn't given their due or maybe was misunderstood. I think really that's at the heart of this. So we're going to watch some clips that will illustrate that. I want to start with Hamlet. Now, I had to go back and brush up on Hamlet, but if you guys haven't seen any version of Hamlet or aren't familiar with the story of Hamlet, it's, you know, probably Shakespeare's most famous play about a Danish prince whose father is murdered by Hamlet's uncle, and then the film is about Hamlet avenging his father's murder and killing his uncle, who is the illegitimate king. Did I get that right? More or less? More or less. Okay, so this is a scene between Hamlet and Ophelia. Oh, and I want to say, before we watch this, in the original, you know, this follows the letter of Shakespeare, and he's telling Ophelia that she should go to a nunnery. Now, in modern times, we think of that as, you know, like a convent where you find pious nuns. But I guess in Shakespeare's time, it referred to a whorehouse.
So, oh, really?
which completely changes the meaning of
really?
this as I originally saw it. So keep that in mind.
Figurative.
Yes.
Interesting.
I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord.
Wasn't Kenneth Branagh a little too old for this role?
Yeah, he directed it though too.
Yeah. He's like, I know the perfect guy for the lead role.
Exactly. This guy.
Help him, you sweet.
If thou dost, Mario, give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow. Thou shalt not escape calumny.
So I believe in the context of the film, you're supposed to fully be on Hamlet's side here. Like, she deserves this.
Yeah.
It seems pretty brutal, though.
It's pretty brutal.
He's like dressing her down.
I have heard of your paintings too well enough. God has given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig, you amble, and you lisp, and you nickname God's creatures, and you make your wanton lift your ignorance. Go to. I'll no more of it. It has made me mad.
I can see why someone would want to tell the story from her point of view after watching that clip. And so now here is Daisy Ridley portraying the same character we just saw Kate Winslet portray in the film Ophelia.
Tell me what is inside a person.
So in Hamlet, she loses her mind over her love for Hamlet, I believe, and ends up drowning herself.
Yeah.
And this, right, yeah. There seems to be a little bit more backstory being put here.
These are strange times in this castle. Be afraid. You will only be safe if you are afraid.
Hamlet, we can escape now. Come. You turn my son against me.
I think Ophelia is dangerous.
They want me to marry another.
Well, clearly, I feel like this is an attempt to portray her as a victim here.
That's compelling. It seems to, it's a nice perspective to put on that, particularly between the fact that, she's just the woman who's gone mad, but perhaps there's actually a compelling motivation for her emotions.
It looks like the critics liked it. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes, 60%, not bad. They said that it's flawed yet intriguing. Ophelia uses Hamlet as a starting device for a noble attempt to offer a misunderstood character long overdue agency. Looks like this one pulls it off.
Rotten Tomatoes is funny, just as an aside to that. For me, I always find Rotten Tomatoes, like, there's a sweet spot in the 40% for me. Like, I will go for movies. I'll know that I might really like something or really hate it when it's in the 40s.
Yeah.
The Metacritic.
In fact, I tend to like movies in the middle more than I do on either end of the spectrum. Because if people disagree about whether a movie is good or not, then to me there's something interesting about that film.
That's a discussion.
The other interesting thing is, like, when, even if the opposite, where if it's like the critics give it a low score, but the audience gives it a high score, like, wait a minute, like, that's what happened with I don't know what both you guys thought of Joker.
I really liked it.
I liked it too.
I mean, I really liked it. I really liked it. Even when on Rotten Tomatoes, it was like the critics, it was like 30 or 40%, but the audience score was like 70-80%.
And that's a great example of another story being told from another character's point of view.
Actually, that is.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. Is it a switch? Because this is pre-Batman, it's more of a. I guess it's an origin story or a spin-off. I would consider. I think what I'm interested right now is stories that take place, simultaneously. Yeah, examine the same period of time, I guess.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
So, now, Maleficent is a true switcheroo. I mean, that really does follow the story of Sleeping Beauty from a completely different perspective. And you know what I liked about the remake? This is probably my favorite part of the remake. Was they basically reenacted one of the scenes from the animated film verbatim. So we're going to watch basically the scene where she curses the girl, Aurora.
That's how I like to make an entrance.
Yeah. I really love this animation style, old school.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, quite a glittering assemblage, King Stephen. Royalty, nobility, the gentry, and... how quaint. Even the rabble.
What a burn. Really threw some shade.
Zing.
This is transporting me back to childhood. I haven't watched this since.
I had hoped it was merely due to some
Yeah, I haven't seen this in a while either.
Well, in that event, I'd best be on my way.
It's been a while for me too, but what a deliciously wicked character. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see why people just were enamored with her from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listen well, all of you. The princess shall indeed grow in grace and beauty, beloved by all who know her. But before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. Oh no!
Seize that creature!
Stand back, you fools!
I feel like Maleficent is Disney's greatest villain. And I feel like, for my taste,
More than Ursula.
Ursula's great. I mean, they're all great. I mean, there's a lot of great ones.
Yeah.
But there's something so iconic. Maybe it's just the look, the design. I mean, the beautiful design.
I do love that old, the old Disney animation back in the 50s and 60s, 40s, even Snow White.
And now here is from the original Maleficent film with Angelina Jolie. Here's the exact same scene.
Disney really tries to recreate the scenes beat for beat.
Yeah, it's really...
Sorry for the
bike. I think there's an attempt to really honor the source material.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good entrance.
Crafted. Pretty good, although she didn't materialize in a green smoke.
She didn't. I was looking forward to that.
Royalty, nobility, the gentry, and how quaint. Even the rebel.
Now the difference here is the backstory. We know that this king wronged her before all of this.
Gotcha.
This scene happens much later in this movie than the other scene happens in Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah. So there's more of a... You could draw your own conclusion, basically. Yeah. Or they guide you toward more of a sympathetic angle.
That's right. So there's a long history between her and this king. And he basically stabs her in the back. He cuts off her wings.
That's right.
And
so there's more...
she's fully justified in her, anger here.
Yeah. Very interesting to see that attitude through that lens. It's like we're rooting for her now.
That's right.
It's this sense of karmic justice, almost.
Yeah. Right. It's very much Julia Roberts' big mistake, huge mistake moment right here.
Yeah, right. Oh, here we go. There's the green smoke.
The princess shall indeed grow in grace and beauty, beloved by all who meet her.
That's a lovely gift.
Don't do that.
I like that she has all the power.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, look. Getting an idea.
Before the sun sets.
There's the green smoke.
There we go.
She will prick her finger on the spindle of the spinning wheel and fall into a sleep like death. A sleep from which she will never awaken.
What's the difference between a sleep like death and death?
coma? Brain dead?
Yeah. Just limbo, I guess.
I guess we want to believe she's not truly, completely evil if she doesn't say the word death.
Yeah.
I think that's a subtle difference in the script from the first.
That's a good point.
The princess
The original.
can be woken from her death sleep.
Now this is different too.
Only by true love's kiss.
Now in the original, this caveat to the curse was made by one of the fairy godmothers, not by Maleficent herself.
I see.
So this is again making Maleficent
more sympathetic.
Yeah. And she did. Kiss. She threw that look over at the king. True love's kiss.
That's right.
Yeah.
I need that chair in my house. Now, I have mixed feelings about this because people loved Maleficent for years because she was this sinister, wicked, unapologetic woman. Did we need to justify her actions? Or can we just enjoy her being wicked because she's wicked?
I don't know. It's maybe a little bit of both, but I'm my gut is telling me to lean more towards wicked for sake of wicked. I mean, I think a lot of stories in like recent decades has been sort of anti-hero stories and like sort of like taking the perspective, like sympathizing with the bad person, whether it's stuff like Breaking Bad or whatnot, where like we kind of like, we know they're bad and evil, but we kind of want to see them get away with it.
Yeah, it's such a classic character that I think it's because of the appeal of the character and the iconography of a character like that we want to know more about her. And then because we want to know more about her, we're going to make her like the lead character. And in order to make her the lead character, we should probably want to identify with her. So I think there's like this, you're kind of going down that, it's almost like a writing experiment, and it is compelling. It really is.
And it was very successful. It did great. They, made a sequel. It also did great. So, Disney knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I want to play one more version of Maleficent. This is from something you guys probably have not seen, and that I have seen because I'm a dad. Are you guys familiar with Disney Descendants?
They say I'm trouble. They say I'm bad.
I really, really enjoy it. It's basically a series of film musicals by the team that created the High School musicals. And so they decided to tell the stories of the children of Disney villains. So you have the daughter of Maleficent as the protagonist, and her name's Mal. In Descendants, we're going back to just enjoying Maleficent as a wicked, wicked person, unapologetic, who's just wicked for wicked's sake.
I was once like you, my child, slightly insecure. Argued with my mother too, thought I was mature.
So the context here is her daughter's having second thoughts about being evil. Her daughter's a more complex character.
Oh, yeah. As you do, yeah.
Don't you wanna be evil like me? Don't you wanna be mean?
Now she's trying to sell her on it, I see.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And she's a teen trying to figure out who she wants to be, right?
And spend your life pretending to the poor.
See, this is the kind of villain I love.
Yeah.
Like comic book, almost, or cartoon.
And she has a charisma that we love because she's just so unabashedly evil. And she knows who she is. She's comfortable in her skin.
So that is the third Maleficent we've seen. I feel like what I'm leaning towards personally is I like the idea of retelling a story like Ophelia's story if it's going to shed light on someone that was misunderstood. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of trying to redeem a villain in a story. That's just my personal...
It's a fair point.
What do you think about this? Back to the Future 2. A section of that movie is re-seen by the same lead character from just a different perspective. And he's got to like kind of dance around himself. So that's not necessarily a switcheroo, but it is a interesting
it is a different
new
perspective,
view.
Though.
Yeah.
Now, it'd be interesting. Now, would you want to watch the the Biff story.
Yeah, I would.
You mean the Donald Trump story?
What's Biff's deal? Like, he probably did not have a happy childhood.
No.
He probably had an alcoholic father who beat him, and his parents got divorced.
He's perpetuating the cycle of abuse and bullying.
It is a sad character if you think about it too much.
He's learned how to be overcome by being the strongest and not being picked on in school. So now he's a sympathetic character. But,
so where would Biff be today?
President.
That's the power of love. So one of the reasons we wanted to make this episode is because this was such a hot topic on Reddit. And so I want to kind of discuss with you guys some of people's most in-demand remakes from another character's perspective. So Star Wars, as you can imagine, is a huge one. A lot of people think it'd be great to see Star Wars retold from another character. One that I thought was funny is to retell Star Wars as the original Star Wars, but from a Stormtrooper's POV and framed as a goofy Stormtrooper buddy cop comedy.
I just feel like we all have really great aim until the second we put on these helmets. I concur.
Hilarious. That's hilarious. That does remind me of the Kevin Smith Clerks, that whole dialogue they have about
the independent contractors.
I bet they brought independent contractors in on that thing. Plumbers, aluminum siders, roofers.
Not just Imperials, is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. In order to get it built quickly and quietly, they'd hire anybody that can do the job. Think the average Stormtrooper knows how to install a toilet main?
That is such a great scene.
Yeah.
I feel like Favreau kind of made this person's wish come true even for a few seconds in Mandalorian. Do you guys remember that scene where there's two troopers like on a stakeout?
I think Taika Waititi directed that one, but yeah, we spent like 5 minutes with a couple of stormtroopers in a day in the life of a stormtrooper trying to shoot something and missing.
Aristotle, what would be your dream Star Wars switcheroo?
I was joking earlier that Watto from episode 1, Watto was the slave owner of Anakin Skywalker, just trying to run a scrapyard. And then here come these guys, they take away his work, they ruin his equipment. He's just trying to run a business.
What about you, Carl? What's your top Star Wars switcheroo?
I was thinking like point of view from Lando Calrissian pre-Empire, where he's just like living in Cloud City. Like,
oh, that's cool, yeah.
What's the palace intrigue that happens there in Cloud City with Lando?
You look absolutely beautiful.
That's a great idea.
I can already imagine Lando sort of politicking his way up through power to become sort of the guardian of Cloud City.
Yeah, totally. He's like trying to be all Switzerland, like, I'm not getting involved in this, war between the Empire and the Rebels. I'm staying out. And then his old buddy Han Solo calls. Like,
yeah, he's like, oh, I gotta go back.
All right. But then he betrays him anyway.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, too.
That would be fascinating. I would watch that.
I think that's my favorite so far. I think that's mine. Let's move on to another well-known and beloved property, The Matrix.
Oh, The Matrix is incredible.
Matrix, yes.
Someone online suggested The Matrix, but told from Agent Smith's perspective. Just a dude doing everything he can to prevent a bunch of smelly rebels from ruining his battery factory.
I hate this place.
I mean, come on. He's just trying to do his job, his programming.
Yeah, it's like the humans that are actually causing the harm here. Like, they're the ones causing all the trouble. We actually saved their lives. Yeah, humans messed everything up.
We know that it was us that scorched the sky.
They should be thanking us, right?
That's very true.
I wouldn't mind seeing the Cypher story.
Yes, I was just going to say the Cypher story.
Because, I mean, I feel like he's a very relatable character.
Ignorance is bliss.
He's just like, I had a good life. I just want to eat steak, drink wine.
Yeah, I want to live in the Matrix. I like the Matrix.
I choose the Matrix.
Cypher's unrequited love for Trinity, I think, is compelling.
I don't remember you ever bringing me dinner.
Let's end it with Batman, because I think that's a good world. Well, I'm picking my favorites here. Sorry.
That's fair enough.
Someone suggested any one of the Batman movies, but retold from Alfred's perspective.
Coming this summer, from the shadows of Batman,
it's happening!
Emerges a hero.
They're finally going to make a movie about me!
Alfred, the movie.
There's also a television show called Pennyworth that airs on Epix. That's basically Alfred, when he's younger, he's working for like the British Secret Service, and he gets hired by Thomas Wayne. But again, but that's like not...
It's more of an origin.
It's an origin of Alfred, not Alfred during the time of Batman, you know?
Right. And Lucius Fox would be an interesting character to follow, trying to run Wayne Enterprises and kind of under the table sneak all of this stuff over to Bruce Wayne.
The other pitch I would do is maybe a Catwoman romance.
Meow.
Well, we saw what happened with that. Halle Berry.
Now that, I feel like, was not the right approach, because that was not about Batman. But if it were a Catwoman Batman rom-com...
You're catnip to a girl like me. Handsome, dazed, and to die for.
I guess in conclusion, I would say that it's always worth retelling a story if there's a good reason, and if you've got, you know, a good idea. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Especially in a world where we love revisiting the same worlds and the same IPs over and over again. Why not? You know, why not give us a Stormtrooper Star Wars movie or an Alfred Batman movie?
I absolutely agree with that, particularly with the universe of Star Wars, which is purely an invention for film. It was made for movies. It's like its original form is film. And it's a universe in which you can literally make up anything. There's no other source material. You can just throw anything against the wall and create something that will go along with, will buy, I think, in the sense that it's just, it's such a huge opportunity to make up literally anything, and we'll go with it. And I think the problem with the sequels, this is kind of stuff that I talk about on my channel, but the problem with the sequels is they just kept rehashing things that we've already seen, we've already understood, but we do really want to go back and revisit that world and look at it from different angles through different prisms. And I think, like what you said, Justin, if there is a compelling angle that you have on a story, and if there's a compelling character motivation going on there, I would like to see that.
I think the base we had to get to is like characters we care about. Like the fact that like since the original Star Wars trilogy, we cared about a big furry guy that all he did was grunt, you know, Chewbacca. Like we actually cared about a character that all he did was grunt. You know what I mean? And like I think that no matter what character perspective, I mean, I would see a movie from Chewbacca's perspective. You know, if it was a compelling story, you know, it'd be interesting. It would be really
holiday special.
But I think it boils down to, is this character interesting? Is there something not being served by not telling a story through their particular perspective? Like the Ophelia example, I think that was a really good example because it was like, you know, here's a character for centuries told from the perspective of, you know, the male author and through the prism of the male protagonist.
More stories from non-cis white males, please.
More diversity.
The bottom line, right?
We've got a lot of those. I mean, we're good. We'll still keep making those. I'm just saying, let's mix it up a little.
Yeah, spread it out.
Well, I had a great time, you guys, talking about this with you all. I thank you so much, Aristotle, for being a guest on this episode.
Thank you, guys. This is awesome.
Oh, man, thank you.
You guys go check out Aristotle's channel. We'll have a link below. And please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe for more shows like this. We have another series premiering next week called Did This Age Well? And our premiere episode will be revisiting the film Commando.
It's a party.
1985 classic. Please comment below. Let us know which switcheroo you'd love to see. I'm sure there are many opinions about this, and we'd love to hear yours. Thank y'all, and we'll see you next time.